Welcome to the Education Corner, a podcast by Education Choices magazine.
Education Corner podcast would like to welcome Mr. Mike Rickner from Ashfold School, Mr. Jeremy Quartermain from Bradfield College, Mrs. Margaret Giblin from Marymount International School, and Mr. Daniel Biggins from Haberdashers School. Ashfold School is part of the Stowe Group. It's a co-educational prep school for children aged 3 to 13, located on 30 acres in Aylesbury in Buckinghamshire, with day, weekly and flexi boarding options. Bradfield College is a co-educational senior school in Berkshire, which offers day and full boarding for pupils between the ages of 13 and 18. Marymount International School, London, is an all-girls school in Kingston upon Thames and offers day, weekly, flexi and full boarding for pupils from the ages of 11 to 18. And finally, Haberdashers Adams is located in Shropshire and is a selective co-educational state grammar school for pupils aged 11 to 18, with boarding available for boys. It's so wonderful to have you all here representing the different aspects of boarding school provision available to parents and families in the UK. Firstly, would each of you like to introduce your schools and the boarding facilities that you offer families in the UK beyond, obviously, my very rudimentary introduction?
Yeah, thanks, Chloe. So as you said, we're a 250 pupil strong prep school, 3 to 13, and we offer boarding, either flexi, weekly or occasionally, depending on the need and desire, from the age of 8 upwards. And we have about 50 beds that we can offer per week. And throughout the week, most of those will be filled in one way or another. And it's a key part of our offer and what we want our pupils to experience in their time with us.
And then Jeremy.
Hello. So we're Bradfield College. We are situated about 35 minutes from Paddington on the train, but in the beautiful countryside of West Berkshire, where we have a site which expands to about 270 acres. We have 11 boarding houses, 800 pupils. We have day pupils. Obviously, we have boarders, and we offer the IB A levels, and we're introducing a BTEC in sports and exercise science in this September.
How exciting. And Margaret.
Hello, Chloe. Thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here. Yes, we are Marymount International School, based in London, in fact, in Kingston upon Thames, and we're nestled in a beautiful 7-acre garden campus, very close to central London. We are an all-girls school. We offer solely the IB curriculum, the middle years programme, followed by the diploma programme. And we're very proud to be the first all-girls school in the UK to offer the IB. We've been doing this since 1979. Our boarding provision is, approximately about 25% of our cohort board. And we're very fortunate to have a large international demographic alongside our local students as well. And we offer 7-day, 5-day flexi and the occasional ad hoc boarding as well.
So lots of options. And Daniel.
Yes, good morning. Thank you very much. Haberdashers Adams is a school in Newport in Shropshire. We are a state boarding grammar school. We're one of only 7 of those types of school in the UK. So selective based on academic ability at entry points, and recently having gone co-ed in September 2024, despite having had girls in the sixth form since the 90s. We offer around about 100 beds across 2 bespoke boarding sites for our junior and our senior pupils. At the moment, that offer is just for boys, but with plans with the co-ed status to expand that to girls in the near future.
And Mike, you run a prep school boarding option. We're just interested to hear, because obviously not all parents consider prep boarding necessarily as something that they do. How do you think that this benefits the children boarding before senior level?
I think it's I think it's an opportunity, depending on the family setup, to provide a much needed level of consistency for pupils in their working week. We're seeing more and more both sets of parents are working, and to provide that opportunity for parents that they know their son or daughter can stay over, and they've got that security there as well, for their children being at school in that amazing environment. But I think in terms of pupil values and things it can develop, obviously, that independence is key, making sure that they're responsible for packing the school bag the night before, making sure that they're, getting themselves up, washed, dressed, ready for school, down to breakfast on time, are all key traits that will just be expected of them when they get into that senior school boarding environment more and more. And if we can instill that, then they're only going to thrive when they get to senior school. I think there's an element of resilience building and courage that occurs as well as they take that more independent step, and learn those things. That's only going to benefit them in all facets of their education and life. But also, I think the opportunity to work out how to sort of coexist with people. Again, when they get to the boarding schools in their senior schools, they're not going to have much, if any, say of who they're suddenly dormed with, and to have learned the ability to how to socially integrate, I think is really important, and therefore work in that community with kindness and to develop those connections. It's just going to be a massive benefit for them.
As part of the Stowe group, how do you feel that prep boarding at Ashfold School will prepare them for going on to boarding at the senior school, particularly for those, obviously, who do go on to Stowe?
I think what we can offer is getting them into those routines early. That suddenly their day is elongated. We make sure there's, fun and exciting boarding activities of an evening, that they've done their prep, they've done their homework, under our guidance, but independently. And again, those things are what's going to, filter through when they get to Stowe. But also just getting used to the routines and that, as I said, that independence and the resilience to do that yourself, where they can hit the ground running at Stowe when they'll have an even longer day, an even busier day. But they've got that in their sort of muscle memory of how to cope with those processes, really. I think that's the most important thing.
And over to Jeremy. Bradfield College has a large campus. I've visited several times now. It's almost like your own village, isn't it? With many facilities on site and ongoing plans to develop this further. How does having these extensive facilities on campus support full boarding at Bradfield College, and how does it benefit your boarders?
Gosh, well, I think we probably all agree that schools are primarily about people and relationships, more than resources. But having said that, we are really, really fortunate to have incredible facilities in terms of our tennis centre, sports facility, performing arts centre, Greek theatre even, but specifically in terms of boarding, it does mean that the investment that we've made in our boarding houses means that they're incredibly comfortable, that they are distinct communities within their own right. As you pointed out, Bradfield really is a village and is built around a village in this most beautiful of valleys. We've just started building a health and wellness centre, which will contain all the sort of facilities, medical. We have a lot of great sports, boys and girls at school as well, so for physiotherapy, but also our counselling services, and so forth, is all going to be built in a new state-of-the-art wellness and health centre. But I think really in terms of how our facilities and resources support our boarders, it's that holistic educational offering where they have the opportunity to develop within a context which gives them such easy access to, whether it's a 9-hole golf course or a music technology centre. It doesn't matter what it is, pretty much it's here at Bradfield for them. And I think that's why so many of our pupils go off and do really exciting things. But I come back to the point that in reality, what we're proudest of, and I'm sure it's the same for all of us schools, is of course the outstanding level of pastoral care which is provided by our staff who really know each and every child, and that's the alpha and omega, I think, of boarding or successful boarding.
Bradfield College is co-ed. It's a co-ed boarding school. How do you feel that you cater for this, and how do you feel it also benefits the children and prepares them for life after Bradfield College?
Yeah, it's an interesting point, isn't it, around co-education. I mean, I went to an all-boys school, and so I often blame my lack of social confidence, my awkwardness, growing up on the fact that I was in a single-sex school, or so I used to blame my mother. No, but joking aside, I think that great schools are great schools regardless of whether or not they're co-ed or single-sex, and I think it's very easy to sort of be caught in a debate which doesn't really focus on culture, ethos, and values. And what I'd say is this, is that I would argue, having said all of that, I would argue for the fact that our boys and girls boarding houses are completely distinct. They're completely separate. They're their own community. And so actually, although we're co-educational, the reality is that our children spend more time in a single-sex environment, as their boarding houses clearly are, and in terms of sports, which tends to still be, whether it's girls cricket or boys cricket or whatever, so an awful lot of their lives are spent within that group. But I also think that actually being co-educational gives you access in exactly the same way as being part of an international multicultural community, which is diverse and inclusive. It gives you access to differing perspectives. And of course, we do grow up and we live in a world where we're not going to work in single-sex environments, or it's unlikely that we will. And so I think to embrace all aspects of humanity within an educational setting, and to sort of gloriously celebrate diversity, and to grow up to have really good relationships, because I think education is not just about professional success and examination results. It's also about equipping young people to live well and to really flourish. My inclination is that it is achieved really well within a co-educational environment, but with the caveat that there are many single-sex schools who do an incredibly fantastic job. And so I think it's a personal decision for parents in that regard, in terms of what feels right. But I'm very conscious of it not being a sort of binary choice, because I think great schools, as are on this panel, think really deeply about culture, ethos, and values, and all the things that we do here at Bradfield as well. And I think that can be achieved either in a co-educational setting or very well as well in a single-sex setting, of course.
Margaret, as an all-girl, so obviously, very different setup at Marymount. And also there's, I imagine to all of you, a certain amount of an international intake, but you are an international school. What do you feel are the advantages of single-sex boarding for your girls at Marymount International School? And how do the types of boarding you offer support international families?
Yes, thank you, Chloe. I must say I would agree with Jeremy that actually, the single-sex co-educational debate is very much about fit and flourish for each child, and I think we would be very much of that ilk. But as I suppose, a strong advocate of single-sex education, having worked in all domains, I do think that an all-girls environment can be a very powerful foundation for young women in their educational environment. We recently had the International Women's Day celebration, and for me, I was really reflecting on the great privilege it is to be head of an all-girls environment. But it did remind us of the importance of creating those educational environments that really are giving our young girls and women that those opportunities to be authentically themselves. And what I find here at Marymount is that all of our education is tailored for girls. Our pedagogical approach is focusing on girls. Our classroom environment is very much there to empower our students, to give them their voice. they don't fall foul of perhaps some unconscious bias about what might be a girl's subject or a boy's subject. For them, every opportunity is available to them wherever their passions may lie. And we do know that there is research, particularly conducted by the Girls' Schools Association, that girls in all girls environments do tend to achieve stronger academic outcomes, but also have stronger resilience. They are more likely to have stronger university progression. And for us here at Marymount, it is really about giving our girls their authentic voice and I suppose harnessing those passions and really enabling them to develop holistically in the broadest sense, not just through academic rigor, but through their commitment on the sports field, on the stage, and the music, to develop all of those gifts and passions. And within our boarding environment, we are an international school. We're a consciously small school, but we've over 40 nationalities here at Marymount. And our boarding environment really is almost like a microcosm of the world. And I think we call ourselves international, but we would prefer to think it's more of an international mindedness. Our girls really do have that nuanced intercultural understanding. They have a really strong global citizenship lens. And I think what that enables us to do is to ensure that when our students graduate, they are leaving us as really empowered, accomplished, capable, and compassionate global citizens that want to contribute very much to the world that they will enter as well, because that idea of service and giving back is very much at the heart of who we are as well. So I think in an all-girls environment, we manage to really empower our students to be leaders in whatever domain they want to be. But like Jeremy said, we are not solely, we don't ban boys from coming on campus, and we certainly have opportunities within our global network where, whilst we are autonomous, we have a global network of 21 schools, and we run festivals with our sister schools, which are co-educational. We also have academic opportunities, whether it be going to Thyman and The Hague and participating in the Model United Nations. So for us, it is not that our girls are not engaging with boys on an intellectual or a social level, but they are being educated in a very much defined space that really does develop girls to their fullest potential.
Daniel, going over to you, would you like to explain to our listeners who may not be fully familiar with state boarding, could you explain what state boarding is and what you offer at Haberdash Adams?
Of course, yes. So state boarding is quite a unique part of the UK education system. There are only 30 state boarding schools within the country. And unlike a boarding school in the independent sector, the education itself is free. That part of it is state funded. So families only pay for the boarding element. So things like accommodation, meals, activities, pastoral care, etc. So that gives students real access to a high quality state education without the increased costs that you might get in the independent sector. So we're typically coming in around about a third to a quarter of the price in terms of fees in the state boarding sector. So at Haberdashers Adams, we narrow that uniqueness down still further because we're also a grammar school. There are only, as I've said already, 7 state boarding grammar schools in the UK. So students are selected here on academic ability. And really, we're all about combining that academic excellence with a holistic approach to education, encouraging students to follow their passions, to get involved in sports, drama, in the arts, and really pushing that through as well. Boarders live in one of our 2 dedicated houses. So we split based on age. So we have a junior house for years 7 to 9, and they live at Longford Hall, which is a grade 2 listed 13th century country house set in the Shropshire countryside, set in around about 90 acres, which is where our sports facilities are also based. And our seniors, so year 10 up to 13, including obviously our sixth formers in there, live at Beaumaris Hall, which is just off the main school site in the town of Newport. So that one is was purchased by the school in 2017 and renovated into a purpose-built boarding facility. So students really are very much part of the day school when it's the school day. Unlike some other models, our students in boarding are very much part of day houses when they're on the school site in the day. So that means that they can get fully integrated into the wider school community. They're learning alongside the day students. They're fully immersed in the house system we have here as well, but also get that support and the independence that boarding life provides. So for many, it's a real sort of positive experience, building those confidence, those relationships, and a real strong sense of belonging.
And I imagine it's quite competitive for places.
Absolutely can be. Obviously, with the reduced fee and particularly with the VAT levy in the independent sector as well, we are seen as an attractive alternative to the independent sector, particularly with the academic achievement we get, the facilities that we have. So we do very much try and model our school on an independent school, but as I've mentioned, the state funding part of it means that the education comes in for free.
Now, this is more of a group question. How do your boarding facilities for sixth form students support them to develop life skills and independence in preparation for life beyond school? And perhaps if we start with Jeremy.
Gosh, well, I suppose in terms of looking at how it develops, those sort of life skills in terms of our boarding facilities, often, pardon me, I think we're very, very lucky indeed that our boarding houses here at Bradfield are really fantastically well equipped, so that they have the opportunity to do baking in houses. And they're encouraged, they have access to facilities where they can do their own laundry and really begin as they go up through the school to develop their not their confidence, but yeah, I suppose in a sense it is confidence, isn't it? In terms of being able to look after themselves sort of in preparation of university, and I think that the fact that each of the boarding house has gardens, sort of communal areas where they socialise and come together. And it's not really just about the facilities which facilitate that. Of course, it's the education within Bradfield, the holistic approach towards helping young people to flourish. Which means, so for example, my daughter's in one of the boarding houses, which had a boarding dinner on, I think it was Saturday evening, parents invited along, a real sense of community. And almost every aspect of that evening was organised by our sixth formers as well. They're real leaders in their house. They mentor younger students, both within their house, but also in our junior boarding house, Faulkner's as well. So I wouldn't say it's so much the facilities. I would say it's the thought that goes in to really thinking about what it takes to help young people flourish in the round, so that they do leave us in a position to really enjoy university or whatever next step that they take in their life. And I think that all good boarding schools do that fantastically well.
Margaret.
Yes, thank you. I would agree. I think, we're very fortunate here. Our facilities are fantastic, and our boarding is actually right in the heart of the school. The girls live right in the centre of our school. And we have intentionally structured our boarding to build that independence, and the students gain additional privileges as they move up through the school. I think it is very much that idea of community that has been spoken about previously. Within a boarding environment, we are very fortunate. Our students also have created boarding families where our older students, all the way down to our youngest students from 11 to 18, have created these little families that once a month the boarding council arrange these family dinners, and that peer mentoring, that sense of belonging. Also, it has got to do with the education. I think boarding, by its very nature, builds independence. Here at Marymount, we talk a lot about students' agency in their learning. They take ownership of it. It's very much the IB learner profiles are really being embodied, whether that's open-mindedness, balance, risk-taking, all of which transfers very much into our boarding community. Obviously, within the facilities, they have access to beautiful boarding lounges where they can cook, they can bake, they can socialise. They also, living right on campus, have access to all of the facilities, whether it's a music room, the art studio, so that in terms of developing their education, they can utilise those facilities over the weekend and at different times in the evening. But more than that, I think they develop life skills of living in community. They learn what it is maybe to share a bedroom, to compromise, to have empathy and compassion. They recognise in a sort of very international school, they understand the nuance of being an international community. And as we're seeing in the current climate today, you know, that there can be moments where various constituents within our community may be worried about a global situation, may be impacted by something. So those softer skills and those, I think, quite sophisticated skills are really developed by living together as community and by having that acknowledgement that they are a community. Our borders always have this mantra that is, though the years will pass, our sisterhood lasts. And it is that idea of recognising that they are there to support one another and to help each other develop into the best versions of themselves. Wonderfully facilitated, I must say, by our house parents, who do a wonderful job.
Absolutely integral. And Daniel.
Yeah, I agree with Jeremy and Margaret that it's not solely down to the facilities that are on offer. Really, the boarding community as itself is, and the leadership opportunities that the students get through the house system is really integral to developing that independence for when they leave us. But our boarding houses are set up, as I've already explained, based on age. So our sixth formers reside in our senior house, and when we took over and renovated the facility, it was designed in the style of a university halls of residence. So our sixth formers are in shared rooms as a pair, all of which are en suite. They'll have study space within those rooms where they're trusted to get on with their work independently, but with our house tutors being made up of primarily teaching staff, they get a lot of academic and pastoral support as well. With the site being located in the town of Newport, the boarders are apportioned a degree of freedom that allows them to explore the town itself. Some of them will take activities outside of the school site. Some of them might have a part-time job that they're able to do. And we also share the town with Harper Adams University as well. So that gives them a nice bit of opportunity to see how students operate and behave, or how they perhaps shouldn't do when they get there. Students have in the house, the same as everyone has also said, of course, some great social spaces that they can be together and collaborate and really explore that. A kitchen within there, they can cook meals and do some baking if they wish to. They've got their own access to laundry facilities as well. So, you know, really good opportunity to gain those skills in independent living that they'll need when they leave us.
And many families listening and families that we work with through CJ Educational Consultancy will be being impacted by many recent events unfolding around the world. And we're seeing an influx of families returning to the UK. How are your schools looking to be able to support families that could be from the UK or international families, and also kind of supporting them during such dramatic events as are taking place? And perhaps if we begin this time with Mike.
I think by being able to provide a weekly boarding offer for parents that are travelling either frequently or travelling abroad for extended periods of time, you know, we can provide that safe home from home environment for their children during that period, where, you know, hopefully it's then one less thing for them to have to worry about or think about, because they know they're with us in this environment. So I think that's the sort of the biggest perk of that. And then again, obviously, you know, the support pastorally for their children and for families to help navigate these points of crises. And you know, and we're very well equipped on the pastoral wellbeing front, as all schools are, to help in that area.
I mean, I'd agree with that we are superbly well equipped to deal with looking after children, and actually, forming those really important relationships with families during times of crisis. I think many of us have worked in schools which have welcomed in many Ukrainian children, for example, during the conflict since 2022. And working in international environments, we have 55 different languages actually spoken here at Bradfield, not all at once, but living in that international environment, we deal with children who are in parts of the world which suffer significant difficulties. I said children. I've worked with children from Afghanistan, Ukraine, and actually most recently in a different school from southern Sudan as well. They are perhaps at the more dramatic end of a conflict. But I think many families suffer crises for all sorts of different reasons at different points, bereavements, family separation, parents working, where jobs move and so forth, or parents posted abroad. And so that is very, very much what we do. And I think we can talk about what we bring to that professionally within a boarding context. But of course, I think actually at the heart of it, and at the heart of all the schools who I'm sure you work with, is that real sort of compassionate desire to look after young people and to look after their families. And I think that's something that's why we do what we do.
And Margaret.
Yes, absolutely. I would echo everything that has been said previously. As an international school, we're not a transient population. In fact, the vast majority of the students who join us in the year 7 will see their whole educational journey. But we are very adept at students joining us at different points of the year and at different entry points. So in that sense, we have a very personalised approach, and we really do get to know our families from admissions right through to we journey with them from admissions to application to induction to integration, and that's really important to us, that we are able to support our families within that. And that as already alluded to, there are various situations that families may need to make decisions in relation to their daughter's education at various times, and we have the agility to do that. We have a very student-centred approach. I think it's very warm and very approachable. And we're a very strong community, and being a very internationally minded community and having that sort of intercultural understanding and that global lens, we're very adept at dealing with those situations. One of our school goals is unity through diversity. And I'm always very amazed at the students' ability to navigate complex issues through the facilitation of the school and engage in very thoughtful discussions. But in that very values-based education, understand the need for compassion, for welcome, for enabling people to really have that sense of belonging. And perhaps another way in which we can transition is, as a boarding school, we don't traditionally have exeats where all of the students need to leave our school. We really only have those at the larger school holidays. So a lot of our families will ask, do they have to leave at a particular time? They don't. During the term time, they can remain with us for the whole duration. But also perhaps as an IB school, I think that can also be an advantage, being a globally recognised curriculum. For some families who it makes the transition easier. And as outlined, we've been an IB school since 1979, and this is a very deliberate choice, not just because of the pedagogy, but because of the IB learner profiles that it celebrates. And that really aligns with our mission and vision, which is about that idea of developing the whole child rooted in the values of kindness and compassion and respect. And I think the synthesis of those two mean that we are well equipped to help families in those moments and to really make sure that their daughters come in to a welcoming environment where they soon are established and have a sense of belonging.
And finally, Daniel.
I think schools all have a really important role to play here, particularly boarding schools, because these relocations can often be very sudden, come with a huge degree of uncertainty. So to be able to provide the stability and reassurance for students and families is really important. We have a very good track record of doing this here at Haberdashers Adams, particularly in recent years with students coming to live with us from the Ukraine, with a couple currently on roll. And we're very well set up to support international families because boarding really creates that structured, supportive environment, and it brings back that sense of community, which is precisely what they've lost. So living with peers, being supported by experienced staff, means that those relocating from overseas particularly quickly become part of that daily rhythm of school and boarding life, which I think is so important to settle down into that routine. Around about a quarter of our boarders are international and come to us for a variety of reasons. So there's no real stigma attached to that. They wouldn't be an outlier, just very much a normal part of school and boarding life. Academically, I think we're very well set up and used to supporting students who might be joining from different education systems. We work quite closely with international agents to ensure a secure fit there. So that helps them adjust to the curriculum. We've also got a really strong EAL provision within the school and in the boarding houses, allowed to support any language needs that they might have. And pastorally, exactly as all colleagues have explained there, the focus is on very much making the students feel secure, feel settled, feel safe, feel supported. Because coming from the areas of conflict that some may be coming from, it's really important that they feel safe and they feel part of the community here. And that can be a huge transition. So our staff, our tutors, the wider school community all pull together to make that as smooth as possible.
Thank you. And finally, looking towards the future, obviously it's a ever-changing world, and you know, kind of there's been a lot of change with VAT, etc., over the last few years. How are your schools adapting your boarding offering to support modern families with options such as flexi boarding, as an example? And if we begin with Mike.
Yeah, as mentioned earlier, it's just that awareness of the demographic is changing, has changed, that we have 2 working parents, and to be able to offer that flexibility in the literal sense of almost day by day, that if a meeting overruns or a train gets cancelled or something happens, that they can drop into that boarding at school at Ashfold, you know, almost within, you know, half an hour's notice. It doesn't matter, we're open, we can cater for that. So it's providing, you know, the flexibility within the flexibility almost of what we can do for parents. And I think it's just making sure that we're being very overt in being able to provide value for money and being able to provide that whole education within that school day and into that boarding day, so that they don't need to be attending clubs outside of school or feeling that pressure to rush off and do things, because we can do that all under one roof at Ashfold in a you know, a safe and loving environment, ultimately, as every prep school should be.
And Jeremy.
So we have a very sort of full approach to boarding here. So we have an option here called day boarding. So some of our students come at 7 in the morning and go home at 10 o'clock in the evening, or they can stay in the boarding houses and they're full members of the boarding community. They have the option of being able to stay in for a number of nights a term. And certainly at any time with any sort of family crisis of any sort, or parents wanted to travel, then there's always that option for our day boarders to come into boarding for a while. But we're really, really clear that the boarding's a way of life here at Bradfield. And so our boarders, whilst our boarders do have the option to go home at the weekend, we have many who choose to stay as well. And what we're very conscious that we wouldn't want to have as a sort of Airbnb approach to boarding, because I think that's detrimental to the overall culture of the boarding house itself, and can be quite sort of messy. And we are proudly a a full boarding school. Everything we do, our ethos, our values, everything we're able to offer to our day pupils as well is because we are 24/7 from the beginning of term till the end of term. And so within that, obviously, we try to be flexible. We've introduced a new day model recently as well for families in this part of the world. But fundamentally, I was at a ISFA football final up in Northampton yesterday evening, which we lost to Aldenham after a sort of hard-fought battle. But what a wonderful thing, actually, that all of the houses came along and supported. There's a coached up to Northampton, and then they all, at the end of that, they all went back when we arrived back at school, sort of 11:15, all going back to their boarding houses, and such a wonderful sense of sort of camaraderie. And although we might have lost on the pitch, it was such a wonderful expression, and I'm sure all our schools have these moments when there's something really beautiful and magical about that sense of community. And I think that's something which is really, really special to boarding schools, all boarding schools.
Margaret.
Yeah, I mean, I think Jeremy's last lines were absolutely right. That sense of community. I think for us, I think a school that's a home is a very special place. And I think we would all agree that as boarding schools, we are homes to our students, and our day students benefit from us being a boarding school as well. I think where we really support our families is we are a community. So we work in partnership with our parents very closely. It's not just the students that are joining our community, it's the families, it's the parents. We have a very strong relationship because they have given us the most precious thing, and we are in a joint endeavour to really realise their fullest potential. I think what we have seen and where we have adapted is certainly, as has been mentioned previously, being a boarding school means that if there are glitches, if there are issues that a student needs to remain on campus, our campus is open. If it's a 5-day boarder who should be going home who would traditionally go home at the weekend, but the parents have a business trip, then of course they can remain over the weekend. And also we offer flexi boarding for those parents who perhaps particularly if we're having sporting events, if we're having evenings where there's extracurricular activities run every evening here. But for some families, that can be a really strong advantage, that they know that their daughter on the night that she's playing sport will be having her dinner and sleeping and being able to get up in the morning and go to school the next day. And also ad hoc boarding, working in partnership with our families. If available beds are there and a parent needs for some reason to travel and they need their daughter to be cared for, we will of course take her in. And I think it's about that flexibility and that working with our parents to ensure that they know that we are going to be a safe and a warm, nurturing environment for their daughters, whilst they may need to do something that is required of them elsewhere.
And finally, Danielle.
Yeah, I think one of the key things that schools have recognised in recent years, as Mike was saying earlier, is that family life has changed quite a lot. So being a state school with a boarding element to it, we feel that we need to be flexible enough to reflect that. We recognise that there are students who board with us for very different reasons. Some would need that full boarding option. Some would be able to take advantage of that on a more weekly basis. Others, actually, their family home is fairly local, but there's a boarding need due to family working patterns or being part of the services, for instance. So we try and set up our boarding provision in order to allow for the understanding of busy family life. So we offer full boarding. We offer weekly students to be able to do that on a weekly basis if they would like to, and that is not a one or the other thing. Like Margaret was saying there, if a student, there's an activity that they really want to get involved with that's being offered through the boarding community over the weekend, then they're very welcome to do that. We do offer a day boarding option as well, which we call Prep Club, available for Key Stage 3 pupils. We don't want them typically going home to empty houses because parents are finishing work late. We also have a degree of flexibility within sixth form boarding. So we do have a couple of students who do sort of 3 nights a week, but similar to what Jeremy was saying, we're quite conscious of taking away from the boarding community by offering too much flexibility. So we don't want people sort of picking and choosing a day here, a couple of nights there, and we really want them to be very much part of our boarding community. But we don't just see flexibility about when students stay overnight. We want to offer a degree of understanding and flexibility, for instance, in things like travel arrangements, understanding that flights to certain countries only take place out of certain airports at certain times, and therefore the ability to stay the night at the end of term and go in the morning rather than be on your own or having to stay in a hotel on your own the night before is something that we would offer quite routinely. Also flexibility in terms of activities. So again, particularly if somebody's quite local, if it's mum's birthday and they want to come out and grab them for a meal out on a Wednesday, providing they sort out the transport, then that's the sort of thing we can accommodate. We also have a lot of students who are taking part in activities outside of school who might be representative for swimming, for instance. We have a Team GB ice hockey player. So these are again things we can be quite flexible over. It's not a case of saying that if you're in boarding for the week, that's it, you're locked down and you can never go out. So there is a degree of flexibility over the sorts of things that we are happy for parents to come and work with us on.
Thank you all. I know that it's a very busy time of year. Thank you all for coming on the podcast and sharing so much information about the boarding offering that each of you have. And I look forward to seeing you all soon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye now. Bye.